Math 76, lesson 2, multiplying whole numbers and money, dividing whole numbers and money, and then fact family. So this is going to be very similar to lesson 1, except we're focusing on multiplication and division. So let's go to our example problems. So the first multiplication problem we have is 407 times 37. This can be a little daunting, but we're again going to learn some or relearn some algorithms that we may or may not already know for multiplication. So we're going to take these numbers, line them up vertically, like so, and then we're going to begin multiplying one place at a time. So we're going to multiply by the ones place, and then we'll multiply by the tens place. So we're pretty much going to take the number 407, we're going to multiply it by the number 7, and we'll find out how much 407 added up 7 times is. And then we're going to take the number 407, we're going to multiply it by the number 30, and then we'll figure out what that number 30 times is. And if we add the 7 times plus 30 times, we'll get 37 times. This might sound a little more It's a little complicated, but this method will make more sense as I do it in class, and this is also kind of the core basis of how I do a lot of mental multiplication. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Starting with the ones place. 7 times 7 gives me 49 ones, right? So I go ahead and put the 9 down. However, the other 40 ones I'm going to trade for 4 tens. Okay. So then now I take 7 times the 0 tens in 407. And I end up with 0, and then I add the extra 40 tens that I got from 49. So 7 times 7 is 0, plus 4 is 4. Now I'm taking 7 times the hundreds place, so 7 times 400, or 7 times 4 is 28, or 2800, or 2800. So this number right here is actually 407 7 times, or 407 added to itself 7 times. So I'll go ahead and put a little side note. This is 7 times the number. Okay. Now, as we move one place in this algorithm, as we're multiplying by the tens place, in order to make this simple, instead of multiplying all of these by 30, I'm just going to add a 0 right there. So I add a placeholder 0 for the tens place. So I'm like, hey, I'm tens place, that's 1 0, so I put 1 0 in front. If I were in the hundreds place, I'd put 2 zeros for 100, etc. So now that I've got my tens place 0, I go ahead and take my 3. 3 times 7 is 21. So then that's what that's saying is I have 21 tens there. So I'll put my 110 here, and then I'll take my 20 tens, and I will trade them for hundreds. And now where this algorithm can get confusing is, why did I take those hundreds and put them over the tens place and not the hundreds place? Well, because 10 times 10 is 100. So the way it's going to work is when I multiply this addition will then be in the value of hundreds as opposed to tens. So it's a little complex, but it still works. And then if that's too much for you to grasp, just go ahead and keep following the algorithm rules that you learned in grade school. They'll keep helping you out. So 3 times 0 gives me 0, plus 2 gives me 2. All right, and then here I've got 3 times the 4, or the 30 times 400. 3 times 4 gives me 12. So I'm going to go and put the 12 down. And then if you were to do 30 times 400, you'd actually get 12,000, which is what we end up getting down here, the number that we just put down. So what I just multiplied here is the number 407, and this is the value of 407 30 times. Now, in order to find the answer to 37 times, some of you may already know what's going to happen. We're just going to add them. So we add the 7 value plus the 30 value. That'll give me a value of 37 times down here. So 9 plus 0 is 9, 4 plus 1 is 5, 8 plus 2 is 10, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 2 is 5. Go and put my comma, and then 1 plus nothing is 1. So my final answer is 15,059. And I just realized I did all of that off camera. So all that addition, 15,059. That's my final answer for my first practice problem. Now let's go to the second one. We're going to be talking about division. Now the first thing to note about division is there are multiple ways to write division, and one of the key phrases that I will get you guys to remember is that fractions are the same operation as division. And what I mean by that is, and I mean a very specific thing by that doesn't hold true all the time, although it is a good general rule of thumb to say that fractions are the same as division, is that I could take this division problem of 200 divided by 12, and I could rewrite that as 200 over 12. And this would be correct. This is the same number or the same problem as this. So Your book may write your problem as a division algorithm like this, or it might write it as a fraction. If they tell you to divide and they show you a fraction, what they mean is they're saying 200 divided by 12. Okay? So now let's go ahead and set this problem up. First, we're going to identify our divisor. Our divisor is 12, which is why this is read 200 divided by 12. And our dividend is 200. So we're going to draw our division house. 12 will be outside as it is the divisor, and 200 will go inside. So now we ask ourselves, how many times will 12 go into the first portion of the number, which is, we'll say, how many times will 12 go into the number 2? And the answer is it can't. So then we go over 1. And now our number is read as 20. So we ask, how many times will 12 go into 20? The answer is 1. It can go in 1 time. So we'll put number 1. We then multiply. 1 times 12 is 12. Now we subtract. 20 minus 12 gives me 8 left over. And then I bring down the 0 for 8, and I start the process all over again. But instead of using numbers up here, I'm now using this number down here. So I know that 12 can go into 65 times, because 5 times 12 is 60. So if I add another 12 to 60, that gives me 72. So I'm going to guess 6 times. I'm pretty sure 12 will go into 86 times. So let's go ahead and try this out. 6 times 2 gives me 12. I carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7, 72. From here I subtract, and I get 8 left over. Now, will 12 go into 8? No. So here I'd go to bring down, but I'm out of numbers. So 12 can't go into 8. I'm all out of numbers. So my final answer becomes 16, remainder 8. And make sure that your remainder R and the period are very clear, so that way it doesn't get mistaken for any other crazy kind of number. But this would be my final answer right here, 16, remainder 8. Now, before we move on, let's go over some key terms here in multiplication and division problems. So in multiplication problems, the numbers being multiplied are referred to as the factors. So this is a factor, this is a factor, and the number which is the answer to the problem is known as the product. So again, words you need to memorize and learn. Over here in the division problem, I already kind of said this, but the number that is going to dividing, or going to be doing the dividing, or on the outside of the little L or house, whatever you want to call it, is called the divisor. The number being divided is called the dividend. So 200 was our dividend. And the answer is referred to as the quotient. All right. So we have divisor, dividend, quotient. All right. Remember, the divisor is the one doing the dividing. The dividend is the one being divvied up. All right. And the quotient is the answer. Okay. So a few more words for us to memorize. And then that'll help us when we start doing our multiplication and division facts. Now, before we go on to multiplication and division facts, we'll talk about how to do multiplication and division with with dollar signs. Okay, so we'll start with multiplication. Let's say we've got 20 times 30 cents. Or sorry, 37 cents. So we'll go ahead and set up our multiplication algorithm, which will be 37 times 20. And what I'm going to do here, which is a good habit, is I'm going to note, instead of putting the cent symbol, I'm going to go ahead and put $0.37. Because what that reminds me to do is I take this decimal point, and I'm going to make it, at the end of the problem, I'm going to take this decimal point, and I'm going to drag it straight down into my answer. So let's go ahead and multiply. 0 times 7 is 0, 0 times 3 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. So 0 times that is equal to $0.00. And notice what I did there with the decimal point. I'm constantly taking this decimal point. Whoops, my thumb is in the way. I'm taking this decimal point and I'm dragging it down to my answer. So as soon as I wrote 0 cents, take that decimal point, drag it down. Now I'm in the tens place. So if I'm in the tens place, I put my placeholder 0 before I start multiplying. 2 times 7 is 14, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 2 times 0 is 0. And then I'm going to take this decimal, I'm going to drag it down. So what that does is it makes sure that my answer is correct. So when I add, what I end up getting is $7.40. 40 cents for my answer. So that's how we do the multiplication algorithm with money. We place the decimal point and then we drag it down to our answers, and then we add it up to our final product and make sure that it has the decimal spot in the same column. All right. Now, division is pretty much the same way, except division is so much faster and so much easier. Pay attention. If you're dividing into dollars, it's really simple. We just take this decimal point, instead of dragging it down, we drag it up, we put it in the block that our quotient's going to be in, and then we just divide like usual. All right. So 5 goes into 8 one time. That gives me 5. Left over of 3. Bring down the 4. 5 goes into 34 6 times. 6 times 5 gives me 30. Subtract. I'm left with 4. Bring down the last number. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract. I've got a remainder of 0, which I do not need to write. And my answer is now $1.68. All right, so that's that's multiplication and division with dollar signs. The last thing we're going to be talking about is multiplication and division facts. So let's say we are given the following numbers. Let's say they give us 8, 9, and 72, and they want us to make 2 multiplication facts and 2 division facts. The multiplication facts are just like the addition facts. Instead of looking for the sum, I'm going to be looking for the product. So of these 3 numbers, the product is likely going to be 72 since it is the largest number. So then I check my work. Is 8 times 9 72? Yes, it is. So that is my first fact. 8 times 9 is equal to 72. And then I can make a second fact by just reversing those, because if 8 times 9 is 72, then 9 times 8 is also 72. Now, the hard part is the division facts, and it's very similar to the subtraction as well. Instead of looking for the quotient, I'm going to be looking for the divisor and the dividend, which can change. So if I need to find a the first thing I want to look for is the dividend. What number can be divided up? Can 8 be divided up by 9? No. Can 9 be divided up by 8? No, but 72 can. So I can take 72, I can divide it by 8, and I will get an answer of 9. And then I can reverse it. I can take 72, I can divide it by 9, and I will get an answer of 8. And I've just wrote 2 multiplication, 2 division facts. All right, these first 2 lessons are usually pretty long because we cover a lot of information that's a little slow and tedious, but the videos should be shortening up from here on out. If you guys have any questions, let me know on the school's website, and I will see you in class.